Everyone talks about the same old rental strategies, but these 3 little known hacks can actually help you save money, increase your cash flow, and ultimately lower your overall risk. And most investors don't even know that these exist. So let's dive into that today. Hey, what's happening? It's Randy Wolfe, and I'm excited to jump in today's video to talk about these. You know, I hear so often a lot of the same old things told over and over and over online, different people talking about. Let's do a video today that's really going to sort of step outside the box, give some real value, but maybe is some things that you may have not heard. You may have heard of 1 or 2 of these, but I think that some of these are very unique in the sense that a lot of people don't actually talk about them. So before we dive in, I'd like to ask, just be sure if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. I'm putting out valuable content each week, and if you're someone that's starting your real estate journey or looking to get started with your real estate journey, I'm hoping that you're going to find a lot of value in the content I'm putting out each week. So be sure to do that. And I'd also like to invite you to check out our community. This private community is a great place for you to learn and grow when you're getting started in your real estate investment journey. It's a very low price compared to the value you receive. There's trainings on a variety of different topics, a video library full of resources to help you get started, other community members to help you with your journey, mentorship inside of the community that you're going to get from me, you're going to get from other members of the community who might be a little further along in their journey, Q&A sessions to get your questions answered, help working through your deals such as comps and estimated repairs, and so much more. It's truly a huge value, and right now we're running a special for a limited time. We have the pricing at the lowest it's ever been, so be sure to check that out. I'm putting the link in the description below. See if it's a good fit for you. I hope you join and we can see you on the inside and help you in your real estate investing journey. All right, so now back to the video. Let's talk about these leasing hacks or these rental property hacks that you may have never heard of. The very first one that I want to talk about today is actually lease timing optimization. That's number 1. And when you think about this, I don't hear a lot of people talking about it, and I actually sort of stumbled across this. So when I first started investing in real estate, I kind of started backwards. I didn't wholesale and flip. I actually started out, my very first investment was a rental property. And I talk about it in some other videos. I was actually planning on flipping this property, but it ended up being a total disaster. I went way over budget and had to kind of pivot, and what I did was I actually burred out of the property. I kept it as a rental. I still own that property to this very day, and it cash flows beautifully right now. I'm getting great cash flow on it. And so I ended up saying, hey, I'm going to start building a rental portfolio and building true wealth. So as I started to acquire more and more rentals over time, it took a while to get to a place to where I had turnover. You know, one of the cool things in the beginning is as you're building your rental portfolio and you lease them out, then, you know, hopefully they stay for a while, at least a year typically. And so, you know, you acquire rentals and then all of a sudden you start getting into turnover. And one of the things that I had kind of done in the beginning was, okay, like I'm going to actually try and lease these for a longer period. So some of the early ones I actually leased for 2 years because I didn't want to have a bunch of vacancy. And that kind of maybe worked out well for me, maybe didn't, because as rents continued to rise, I actually was kind of locked in for those 2 years. But what I noticed was when some of these properties started going vacant, the timing of when they went vacant was not great. So some of these properties were going vacant in the middle of the winter, which here in South Carolina, the winter is not crazy. I mean, it's cold and it snows sometimes, but it's not like, you know, Michigan or somewhere where the, you know, winters are brutal. But one of the things that does remain true in South Carolina and most all markets is typically the winter and the fall is not a time when most people tend to be looking for rental properties. You know, if you look at the fall, kids are already in school, and the winter months, statistically, it's a lower amount of people in a rental pool that are searching for rentals. And so what that means is if there's a lower amount of people that are actually looking for a rental property during that period of time, and you have inventory of rental properties, then it means that it's a low demand but a high supply. It's harder to lease your property. And so one of the things that I sort of stumbled into is noticing as I started to have turnover The properties that I had in the spring and the summer that were available starting in the spring and summer, I typically leased them a lot faster than I did when I had a property that popped available in the winter months or the fall. And so I started to kind of see this trend pretty early on as I started to have turnovers and realized, hey, I need to structure this in a way to where when I have a turnover, I'm actually promoting this property at the peak time, which is spring and summer. Statistically, it doesn't always mean there's plenty of people that lease in the winter and the fall. I'm just saying that the rental pool of applicants is lower statistically in the fall and the winter. So what I started doing is I started trying to optimize my timing of my leases. And the way that you can do this is if you have someone, let's say that you have a property that in the wintertime or the fall, you can structure it with like a 9-month to 15-month lease instead of your traditional 12-month lease. That way you can kind of determine when that renewal will happen. And if that person decides that they want to move out, then of course you're going to have a property that's available during the peak time when people are renting. And this sounds like not a big deal, but it really, really can help you tremendously avoid vacancy. It can also help you get higher rents because again, when the demand is higher, the demand goes up, there is you can get higher rents. So that is something that you can do. Now, what I will advise on is a couple of pros and cons to this. So again, the pro being you're at peak season. The con is you don't necessarily want to have all of your rent like in on a certain month. So for example, I think summer is great because again, there are people who are, they're looking to maybe move into a better school district or whatever, but you wouldn't want to necessarily say, I want all of my rents to end June or the end of May. Because if you do that, and then all of a sudden you've got a lot of rental properties, all of a sudden you have maybe 4 or 5 people that move out. Now you've got 4 or 5 empty units potentially. So I wouldn't necessarily advise doing that. But what you can do is sort of stagger your times over spring and summer. Another disadvantage maybe to this is if you're having a lot of rentals and you start staggering over spring and summer, then you could consistently each month be running into vacant units and having to, get those units leased up. That is something that can maybe keep you kind of busy if you're someone who is self-managing your properties and that sort of thing. But what you can do with that is you can just have really good SOPs in place and stick around to the very end because I'm going to give you the third hack, which is going to help you when you run into that situation to not have these huge time lapses when you're waiting on trying to get someone into your unit. So that is my very first recommendation is optimizing when you lease your units. Now, the second hack that I'm going to mention here, and it may be counterintuitive, but offer discounted rent on the front end, or maybe even in some extreme circumstances, maybe even a month of free rent. Now, I don't necessarily say offer the full free month. Like I don't necessarily like the idea of doing a full free month, but what I'm saying is you can actually offer some discounted first month rent. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, one of the things, if you do that, let's just take, for example, some simple numbers. Let's say that you have a property and typically you're going to would normally rent this out at $1,200, but the spring or summer, and let's say that maybe you're going to push the rent to $1,300. And you could say, okay, I'm going to offer the very first rent, I'm going to discount that first month of rent $300. So they're able to get into that unit for $300 less, the first month would be $900. The reason that can be very, very beneficial is because number one, it can attract people who feel good about they're getting a deal. So they're getting this discount, they're excited, they get some that first month, a lower amount of rent, makes them feel good. And oftentimes people are more concerned with kind of right now than down the road. So they're looking at the idea of, oh, cool, I get discounted rent the first month, instead of maybe focusing as much on the $1,300 versus $1,200. The second thing is with that is it really helps you as far as long term. So let's say that tenant decides to stay for 2 years. Now you're getting a full $100 more of rent over the course of that 2 years. That's an additional $2,400 minus the $300 for the first month rent. That's an additional $2,100 that you would have made over the course of the 2 years. So that's beneficial and more money in your pocket. Another big advantage to this is the fact that if you are going to refinance out, let's say you used a fix and flip loan, and I talk about that in some of the videos. Let's say you use hard money loan, for example. You do that, and then all of a sudden you're going to now lease the property and refinance out. Maybe you're going to use like a BRRRR strategy. Whenever you refinance that property, they're going to be looking at what the amount of rent you're receiving is, particularly like a DSCR, debt service. That higher amount of rent is going to qualify you to maybe pull out more money. And maybe you do, maybe you don't, but it's still going to give you a more favorable refinance. So by doing that, you can actually set yourself up. If you know you're going to burr out, you're going to be much better at having a higher monthly rent amount and maybe giving a discount that first month than a lower monthly rent amount and not giving a discount. So that's where sometimes maybe offering a little incentive on the front end can be really beneficial. Now, as I said when I was laying out the first hack, the third hack is actually turnover. So oftentimes the biggest killer in rental properties when it comes to like costing you money is vacancy. Vacancy can just absolutely eat into your overall profits. If you take a property that stays vacant for 3 months, and again, simple math, $1,000 a month, that's $3,000 of lost rent. All right, think about over the course of 12 months of rent, how long it would take you to get back that $3,000. So vacancy, when you're getting started, you have to understand is a very, very important thing that you want to keep down. Now, one of the ways, again, you can avoid that is trying to have your rent competitive. So make sure that you're really looking at the numbers and you're comping things right to know where your rent needs to be. But avoiding vacancy, one of the hacks that you can do in order to do that, and it sounds very, very obvious, is start marketing the property before the tenant moves out. So many times, and I was guilty of this at times too when I first got started investing in real estate, started having turnovers, I would basically just sort of, I don't know if the right word is forget or get busy, and then the next thing you know, people are moving out and I haven't even put the property on Zillow or any of the marketing. So what you can do, and this will help you tremendously, is a month before your tenant is scheduled to move out, go into the property and do a quick walkthrough just to confirm that the condition of the property is as it was. You know, maybe there's a couple of little touch-ups that you need to do on the paint, but that it's not totally destroyed or anything crazy. And as long as the property is pretty close to what it was when they moved in, use the same pictures that you took previously and post the property for rent. Now, I would say if you go in there and the property is completely beat, you know, that's going to be a little more challenging. You would need to give yourself, you could still do this, but you would need to have the move-in date, you know, staggered a little bit to give you time to get in there and make the repairs and touch-ups. But basically you can do this. Now what happens is people are like, hey, I want to see the property. Can I see the property? Can I see the property? And what I recommend there is, you know, if you can get, when you first market your property, get a lot of pictures, and get video of you walking the property. You know, use your camera, go through, walk the property completely as if you were someone that was interested in renting the property. Walk the exterior, get a view of the street so they can really get a good feel of what's going on. And then what I would do is say, hey, listen, if you're interested in this property, I have a tenant in place right now, but what you can do is you can go drive and look at the exterior, check out the street, and I also have this video that I'm going to send you. We have a lot of interest in the property, so if it is something that you're interested in and you would like to move forward, you can put down a non-refundable deposit. Otherwise, you know, once the people move out, you can then go in and look at the property. If the property, if there's demand, you would be surprised. There's a lot of people that will go ahead and put down a non-refundable deposit because they like the property and they want to move into it. Now, what your job would be, and this is where you got to make sure, is you would go in and make those touch-ups, you know, on the paint and do the things that you need to do so that you're not showing them pictures of one thing and they're getting another thing. So that's why walking the property the month before, whenever you start listing the property, you want to make sure that things are pretty close to what it looked like, and you could be able to jump in there and really get things, you know, touched up, so to speak, whenever they move out. But that is so important, and people don't do this, particularly new investors. They don't do this. I'll be honest, there's a lot of property management that doesn't do this, and I can't really figure that out. For the life of me, I don't understand why, but like, it is definitely something that you can do. Yes, you could do that and the people move out and tear some stuff up on the way out and it causes some overlap and some problems. That can happen. I've had situations before where I actually had before a person that had committed to move in. They were out of state. They got down here and they just did not like the location of the property. That's 100% what it was. I'm absolutely determined that's what it was. But then they started trying to nitpick things in the property. This, this doesn't look good, and this looks like there's an issue here and there, and it smells funny and all the things, and we don't want to move forward. And so what I started doing for that is I started saying, hey, if you want to move in, you have a non-refundable deposit. You do not get this deposit back if you decide you don't want to move in. And I make that clear, and I have them sign something. That way, in the event someone decides last minute they don't want to move in, or they find somewhere else and they decide to do that, vacancy for a month because you were counting on them, but at least you've got a deposit where you can offset that vacancy. So those are 3 hacks I would definitely recommend you utilize to help you with your rental properties. They can definitely help you with vacancy. They can save you a lot of money, a lot of time. So be sure to do that. And like I said, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Putting out content every week. I'm here because I really am passionate about helping people learn how to invest in real estate, how to change their lives. Real estate investing has changed my life, and it can absolutely change yours. If you're working a full-time job, you are absolutely able to do this. Don't let anything stop you from accomplishing your hopes and dreams with whatever it is in life you want. If you want financial freedom, real estate is a great, great tool to get you there. And it's not something necessarily that happens overnight, but if you get started, take action, get educated, you can learn so much in a short amount of time just by being a part of this channel. You can learn a lot in the group I mentioned earlier. Again, I've got the description, the link is in the description below. You can check that out. But as always, I appreciate you watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.